Welcome back, you jack-o'-lantern junkies. Halloween is only days away, so it's time we talk about another Simpsons Treehouse of Horror. Treehouse of Horror 10, or Treehouse of Horror X, which must mean this one takes place entirely in outer space, premiered October 31st, 1999. Wow, an episode premiering on Halloween? What a novel idea. After this, though, most episodes moving forward premiered in November, which always annoyed the hell out of me. Why would I want to watch a spooky Halloween episode after Halloween? Well, I always want to watch spooky Halloween episodes, but I think you get the point. Treehouse 10 features a teen slasher parody, some superhero shenanigans, and a little Y2K madness. The episode opens with the obligatory Kang and Kodos cameos as they host what looks to be an old school variety show. While more silly than spooky, I do appreciate that they come out of a giant jack-o'-lantern or spaceship thingy, but what I don't like is that it lacks any kind of spooky Halloween mood. In earlier episodes, we'd have a creepy graveyard or a headless horseman Krusty. It just feels like we're moving further and further away from the horror of Halloween. That's not to say it isn't funny, you've just got to understand that when I watched these things as a kid, I was looking for scares and laughs, not just laughs. My favorite part of this whole sequence though is when Kang and Kodos tell their bad jokes and the audience doesn't react.
You said we were going to warm up the audience.
Honestly, I feel like that's what happens to you guys whenever you have to listen to one of my bad jokes. It then cuts to the Simpsons, who are turned into characters from previous Treehouse segments, which honestly just makes me want to watch those instead. Well, except for Lisa, who just has an axe in her head, which is understandable because since when has Lisa ever done anything interesting? The first segment of the show, I Know What You Diddly Did, which sounds like something Diddy said to his co-conspirators while on trial, is a spoof of the 90s teen slasher film I Know What You Did Last Summer. Now, if you're gonna spoof a 90s teen slasher, why not spoof the film that kicked off the whole craze? You know, Scream? I know What You Did Last Summer has its fans, but it's kind of meh. Anyways, the Simpsons are out for a late night drive in the fog.
I still can't believe we escaped from those horrible vampires.
But it was worth it to get back our Super Sugar Crisp cereal.
Hilariously, one of the biggest fights with this episode was trying to get the Sugar Crisp jingle approved. Apparently, the owners of Sugar Crisp weren't happy that it was going to be used in a spooky Simpsons episode, but how could they not be? Being featured on The Simpsons is like a rite of passage. Marge then runs someone over since the fog is so thick, which means she probably should have been driving a little more cautious, although she does nearly run over Homer at the beginning of every Simpsons episode. The victim of Marge's terrible driving turns out to be Ned Flanders, who seems to have a lot of bad luck when it comes to his neighborinos.
Dad, you killed the zombie Flanders!
He was a zombie?
The segment then turns into Weekend at Bernie's as Homer tries to make it appear as though Ned died through some unfortunate accidents.
Uh-oh! I think I'm having a heart attack!
Hilariously, Homer is called up to give a eulogy at Ned's funeral, and not only does he almost let it slip that Marge ran him over, but he also says that a man cannot be forced to testify against his wife, which just kills me. The Simpsons arrive home and it turns out someone knows what they did, which makes sense given the movie they're doing a parody of. One of my favorite jokes in the entirety of The Simpsons then happens, when the Simpsons question who could know what they did, and then it sort of pans through various Springfieldians looking at them menacingly, and then ending with Homer pointing at them. I don't know why this always makes me laugh so hard, but it does.
Number.
The reveal of the writing all over the walls, it sort of reminds me of the reveal when Marge finds Homer in the shinning. But how did the killer write this without the Simpsons knowing? Did they wait until nighttime to enter their house so the killer could finish writing on the walls? Suddenly, they're face to face with the fisherman, and what I love is how when the Simpsons drive away, even though they don't get very far, in classic slasher movie fashion, the killer still manages to catch up to them simply by walking. Their would-be killer is quickly revealed to be Ned Flanders, and if you're wondering how Ned could still be alive, well, that's because he is now a werewolf.
Oh, you can't kill the undead, silly.
Now I know a decent amount about werewolf lore, but this is literally the only time I've ever heard a werewolf described as undead. Zombies? Sure. Vampires? Of course. Werewolves? I don't know about that one. The revelation that Flanders is a werewolf also feels really random and tacked on. Like they didn't know how to end this segment, so they're like, oh, I don't know, maybe he's a werewolf or something? According to former staff writer Donna Carey, who wrote the segment, the original idea was going to have the killer be Grandpa Simpson. Now how does that relate to Flanders being run over? I have no idea. But it was going to take place at a spooky roller disco, which you do briefly see when Homer is telling everyone where to hide. However, he left The Simpsons after handing in his first draft to work on the Austin Powers cartoon that never came to be. It wasn't until he saw the episode air that he was like, huh, so Flanders is a werewolf. Alright. I Know What You Diddly Italy Did is a pretty fun segment that I think does a good job of evoking its source material. It's hard to compact a 90-minute movie into a 7-minute segment, but I think this one does it pretty well. However, the random change where Flanders is suddenly a werewolf feels like it comes straight out of left field. There are many times in the Treehouse segments, even the really good ones, where it feels like they don't quite know how to end it, and that's how this one makes me feel. Still though, even with its uneven ending, it's a very funny segment and somewhat spooky.
And I'll go skinny dipping in that lake where the sexy teens were killed 100 years ago tonight.
Next up, we have Desperately Zeking Xena, which starts with the Springfield kids lining up to have their candy inspected. I've never had my candy inspected, but I do know that you can bring it to the police station and they'll give it a look over. Although as far as I know, the whole candy tampering thing is a myth and has never actually happened. Anyways, Nelson jams the X-ray machine, which causes it to emit radiation and in classic comic book fashion, gives Lisa and Bart superpowers. Lisa acquires super strength, while Bart gets stretch powers. The segment is then turned less Halloween-y and more into typical superhero fare, although their theme song is pretty great.
Stretch dude and rubber girl, he's a human rubber band and she's the Hulk in pearls.
Like with all superheroes, there has to be a super villain, and that's where Comic Book Guy comes in as the Collector. Not to be confused with the Marvel character The Collector, which writer Tim Long didn't know was a thing. Comic Book Guy's Collector is basically the average Funko Pop collector, but not nearly as creepy. The newest addition to his collection is Lucy Lawless, best known as Xena Warrior Princess, which is pretty obvious by the title of the segment. I watched a lot of Xena growing up, you know, for the plot.
Must remove my breastplate. Maybe later.
I'm generally not a fan of celebrity guest stars since they barely even try, but Lucy really does give it her all. Apparently when recording her line, she actually asked the Simpsons team how she was going to be animated because she wanted to make sure she gave a proper performance, which really isn't something you get from Hollywood actors on The Simpsons. The Collector places Lucy in a comic bag to help preserve her, but what does he mean when he says she's near mint condition? I'd say 90s Lucy Lawless looked pretty mint to me. Bart and Lisa show up to save the day but are taken out by the only working Star Trek phaser, although Bart's taken out in a manner that feels like it was lifted straight from Naked Gun. Bart and Lisa are then lowered into Lucite, which I guess is supposed to be a Star Wars Carbonite reference, but luckily for them, Xena uses her feminine wiles to save the day.
Xena needs Zex.
Got your lips.
My favorite part of the segment is when Lucy grabs Bart and Lisa and flies off with them, and Lisa's like, wait a minute, Xena can't fly, to which she responds, I told you I'm not Xena, I'm Lucy Lawless, suggesting that Lucy herself could always fly. The segment as a whole has its moments, but for me it doesn't really fit the horror theme. I've never really seen superheroes as a part of Halloween, even though yes, I know superhero costumes are among some of the most popular, but for me, Halloween always represented the spookier side. You know, monsters and skeletons, jack-o'-lanterns and witches, so from a strictly horror aspect, this one never really did it for me. It's funny, but it almost feels like something that could work in a normal episode of The Simpsons if they just made a few adjustments. The formation of the segment started when writer Tim Long remembered a costume his mother had purchased for him when he was just a kid. The costume was Batman, but it was one of those cheap ones with the Batman mask, and the smock which usually had a catchphrase on it. Milhouse is wearing a very similar one in the beginning, and I think we've all had one at one point or another. I remember a friend of mine had a Frankenstein costume just like it, and when we were running around and playing days before Halloween, his costume basically spontaneously combusted. I don't know what the hell happened, but his costume basically just fell apart. I remember we were joking and saying he farted, but we were also like 9 years old, so give us a break. Lucy Lawless was also really happy to be a part of The Simpsons, claiming it was the best experience she ever had guest appearing on a show. She even gave them props for the little speech she gave about growing up and getting picked on for being taller than most kids, because it was apparently something she actually experienced. Imagine picking on a girl in school, only for her to become Xena warrior princess years later.
But I'm sure that once girls get to know the real you, you'll get plenty of dates. Next question.
The final segment, Life's a Glitch, Then You Die, is all about Y2K hysteria, which dated the segment almost immediately. Now, writer Ron Haig knew this going in, but as he put it, I was aware of it at the time that it wouldn't last forever, but I wanted to capture that moment, and capture it he sure did. After Homer fails to debug the power plant's computer systems, it causes the rest of the nation's computers to become infected, and basically turns machine against man. Although why would anyone think Homer is the right person to be the Y2K compliance officer is beyond me. I don't really think this is supposed to be a parody of anything in particular, but it feels like a spoof of the cult classic film Maximum Overdrive. You know, the movie with the Green Goblin truck that keeps trying to kill Emilio Estevez? The Simpsons then find Krusty the Clown, whose pacemaker has gone on the fritz. Thinking he's died,
I'm not dead.
they find a letter on him which claims he's been accepted into a program called Project Exodus, which is really just a select group of people who are going to be evacuated from the Earth. I don't know why the Simpsons think this would save them, considering their names would have to be on the list.
There it is!
Just like the dead clown promised.
You know, I always complain about celebrities being on The Simpsons, but this segment has pretty much every celebrity that has ever existed. Lucky for Lisa, her name appears to be on the list, so she takes Marge and Maggie with her. As for Homer and Bart, they're left to die until they find another rocket. However, this one isn't guarded. When they get on the rocket, they quickly realize why it wasn't. It's all full of Z-grade celebrities like Tom Arnold and Rosie O'Donnell. Unfortunately for Bart and Homer, it turns out their rocket is headed for the sun.
Hey, turn those frowns around!
Oh no, Rosie O'Donnell!
Not wanting even a second more of Rosie, I mean, who can blame them, Bart and Homer decide to eject themselves from the ship, where they quickly die from the vacuum of space. Life's a Glitch is easily the worst segment of the bunch, and while it has some pretty funny moments, as far as a Treehouse segment goes, it's pretty forgettable. The whole Y2K craze was really hilarious when you look back at it, but people really did think the world was going to end. I remember my dad's wife filling the bathtub thinking that there might not be any more running water once the clock struck midnight. While this segment may have worked at the time, it has aged like a fine glass of milk. People that watch this now without any context of what happened back then won't understand what's going on, and the whole premise will basically fall flat. Also, it just doesn't feel spooky. If it went more into the Maximum Overdrive portion with electronics coming to life and attacking people, I think it could have been much better. When trying to find another guest actor to be on the second rocket, they had a hard time finding an actor who wouldn't have an issue making fun of themselves. Luckily or unluckily, depending on how you looked at it, they managed to get Tom Arnold. Simpsons producers really enjoyed having Tom voice himself, and apparently during recording, after every line Tom read, he would turn away and take a shot at one of the writers or producers. I guess this was his way of getting back at them, but they're not the ones who cameoed in Freddy's Dead. That was all you, bud. There is also a brief homage to the 1951 movie When Worlds Collide, which is all about a rogue star headed straight for Earth, which I have never seen but sounds right up my alley. As a whole, I think Treehouse of Horror 10 might be a little better than the previous episode, with my favorite segment being I Know What You Diddly Did. I think they did a great job with the I Know What You Did Last Summer parody, though the end feels a bit rushed. Desperately Zeking Xena is funny, and Lucy Lawless gives it her all as herself, but it lacks the spookiness I look for in a Treehouse segment. And the final segment, Life's a Glitch, Then You Die, is a fun mockery of the Y2K panic, but it doesn't really seem to have a lot going on, and feels like something they could have tackled in a standard episode. But since it's Halloween, that means we have to see how the trusted Hallow-meter feels. 2 on the Hallow-meter. Not really surprising considering the only really spooky segment is the first part. Overall a funny but only slightly spooky Treehouse of Horror, but what do you think? Do you enjoy this one? Let me know down in the comments. Anyways, that's all for today. I hope you're all ready for Halloween and stay spooky.
Halloween night. Someone knows their secret.
He's definitely dead.
Someone knows what they did.
Homer, stop that!
It's the biggest Simpsons Halloween special ever.
Uh-oh, I think I'm having a heart attack.
An all-new Simpsons, part of a full-hour 8/7 Central Fox Sunday.
Shout out to my channel supporters, you're the real reason I know what you diddly Italy did. If you'd like to help the channel out, consider joining the spooky squad below. But no pressure, just watching, liking, and commenting means a lot, and helps keep this creaking crypt of mine going.